Assalamualaikum құрметті Kazakh eli.
Greetings, my cherished Kazakhs. This is the Bilim Kazyna Foundation's YouTube channel. Welcome. Now we are at the district of Sozak. We'll resume our podcasts in the footsteps of our ancestors in the Yskak Bab madrasa in Babata, a village in the Sozak District of the Turkestan region. You mentioned that this is where the city of Balari is located. In the event that Balari is an old city, it is evident that nothing remains of it, as its remnants do not resemble a hill. Had this site been the subject of excavations?
We have heard that Professor Agayeva, a researcher, started up a tent here in 1947 and carried out excavations. Here was also a bathhouse, heated only by flat-wick lamps. We heard that most of the items found during those years' excavations were taken away to museums like the Hermitage. Then Alkay Margholan came up and started researching. Ancient Babata is a book that our brother Muhammad Jamikeoğlu wrote. Unfortunately, he passed away, but during his lifetime, he surveyed the region and annotated the locations, like Tangbala Tas, a stone with signs. He wrote about the research participants and the complete history of this region in the same book. My recollection of their names has faded.
Important artifacts and historical artifacts are typically discovered at the sites of archaeological digs. You mentioned that a flat-wick light was used to heat the bath. Most likely, artifacts from that era were discovered here. Is anything still present, or was everything taken away?
Right now, we have a jar and stones that contain inscriptions, signs, and images carved on them.
Was it in Arkhon inscriptions or Arab script?
Currently, 4 stones are present. We used to call it a grindstone in our early years. However, it is not a grindstone. One has 8 corners, 4 corners, 6 corners. Some of them are bow points, and other stones have Arabic inscriptions. These items were previously viewed and photographed by a visitor from Astana. They declared the intention to take them away, but we asserted that we cannot allow it to be lost. So much had already been taken away. Only in 1947 was a comprehensive investigation carried out. Still, there are a lot of things to discover.
Given that the excavations were conducted in 1947, it ought to be evident that the artifacts were taken away.
Indeed, without a doubt. Those who saw and knew, after all, don't tell lies. It was a period when Kazakhs avoided contact with Russians. According to our fathers and brothers, they knew that certain people were erecting tents in the neighborhood. The book Muhammad Jamikeoğlu contains a complete written version of it. Just find it. The found artifacts, such as stones, are all described in detail.
Ата қазақтың жері мешітпен, медресеге, Құдайға шүкір, бай бір ел ғой. Сонау ата-бабаларымыздың бізге қалдырған.
The Kazakh land is abundant with madrasas and mosques. This is a legacy of priceless items our forefathers left for us, the most priceless of which are these madrasas. Both this madrasa and our grandfather Yskak Bab have a rich history. It is a historic and hallowed location. Tell us about this location and our ancestors, Yskak Bab. Historical records indicate that there once was an old town located here.
Тоқталып, әңгімелеп берсеңіз.
Бұл енді ең бірінші рет Мұхаммед пайғамбардың 7-ші ұрпағы Yskak Bab'tan бұрын
The madrasa of Yskak Bab, a Prophet Muhammad's descendant, in the 7th generation. His brother Abdijalil Bab reportedly arrived in Kazakh land prior to Yskak Bab. He was also known as Khorasan Baba. He was buried in Jana Korgan, Kızılorda region. Abdijalil Bab arrived among the natives with the intention of converting them to Islam by force. Then the local populace rebelled and hurt the man. Next, he told his brother, Yskak Bab, about the situation. Yskak Bab concluded that they would follow the road of religion by means of non-violent promotion. Then, with perhaps 100 troops serving as his guard, they crossed Karatau and asked the populace for guidance. Who is the oldest elderly man in these parts? Whose word will go to the people and whose respect will the people have? Then someone brought up Baba Tukte Shashta Aziz's father, Kambar Baba. It turns out that he was a well-respected, wealthy man who assisted widows and orphans greatly. Yskak Bab then proceeded to Kambar Baba and explained all 5 duties and the rules of Islam. Kambar Baba acknowledged the truthfulness of this faith and said, "If you make my 11-year-old kid Turkic as educated as you are, I would encourage my people to join this faith." This conversation took place in Babata. After Kambar Baba gathered his people and explained the situation, people replied, "We'll believe in this man if he can perform a miracle for us." At that point, he pondered the type of miracle he might do. Then he said to Kambar Baba, "We will burn your child with firewood brought on 60 camels." Thus they fetched fuel, spread felt, and sat the little Turkic on it. By the way, later on, that boy would be known under the name of Baba Tukte Shashte Aziz. So, fearing that they might fire and murder an innocent youngster, the people stood up. However, the child remained unharmed and unburned by the crimson flame. Following that, many converted to Islam. Yskak Bab was honored and he was raised on a white felt. A large city by the name of Bangladesh stood behind this madrasa on the slope of Mount Karatau. In the 2nd and 3rd centuries, it was at its most advanced. Along the Silk Road, it was one of the biggest centers of trade. These wise, elderly folks told me there was an underground road to Akhmeshut from this location. The route connected cities including Sayram, Turkestan, and Akhmeshut. And Akhmeshut was where this road came together. Yskak Bab settled down here after coming. As he started to create Islamic teachings, he also taught youngsters. There was a large river running at the foot of the mountain at that point. Placed between 2 rivers was the city of Bangladesh. In this city, Yskak Bab made his home and spread the faith. He was a saint. He was aware that he would die. In his will, he specified that his corpse should not be moved elsewhere, and his bones should be buried here. He also wanted his descendants to live and prosper here. There was an additional reason for remaining here. Following his arrival, he sent 100 boys and 100 females to study in Arabia. He set out to find them on his own after a year or 2 of not hearing from them. He then learned that the boys had been taken as slaves and the girls as concubines. They suffered abuse and were utterly worn out. Following that, Yskak Bab felt regret and chose to raise his family in this place. Following his passing, the ancestor was buried in front of the city after consultation among people. Later on, the town of Bangladesh was renamed Babata in honor of that man. Since the 9th century, this location has been known as Babata. That madrasa was still a madrasa at that point. It was allegedly renovated in the 17th and 18th centuries. Here are 24 hujras, or rooms, for students and guests. This is the largest room. There was even a dormitory. 24 wealthy people funded 24 hujra. Every hujra has a sponsor of its own. The wealthy provided assistance for the students' clothing, food, employment for a damulla teachers.
Осы
Were these wealthy individuals from the Sozak District?
No, not just from the Sozak area, but throughout Kazakhstan as well. These people were wealthy and devoted to their religion. Regarding the mausoleum, it belongs to more than one individual. It cannot be split between the Ture, Genghisites, Khoja, Islamic missionaries, or Ushus, Kazakh tribal unions. This building was constructed in an organized manner using asar, or group aid. However, the blacksmith came from Uzbekistan's Samarkand. Nurmagomedov, a Khoja, was in charge of it. The entire country planned and constructed it. Huntsmen themselves even brought game to give as gifts. The argali horns are one example of this. An animal with so large of horns need to weigh between 300 and 400 kilograms. These mountains were full of argali at that time. These days, they are still around. From here came 20 Ishans. Alken Damulla was the last Damulla to live here. He organized the uprising at Sozak. Usually, only educated and strong people would organize uprisings against injustice. But he was executed. He was cleared and given rehabilitation in 1985. He was already dead by then. The madrasa was operational until 1930.
In other words, before 1930, a large number of youngsters had an education and went on to become imams and damullahs, maybe in addition to teaching the Quran and Arabic, tajweed. This place also taught other humanitarian subjects.
There was a library within this mausoleum. We noticed the little booklets. The Khoja mullahs buried literature in the ravine because they were terrified of the Soviets. The elders said that during a flood, the sheets were scattered. Salt was once kept in storage. Karakol sheep skins were washed. And wheat was kept in the vast hall of Yskak Bab's mausoleum. People prevented the destruction of the madrasa when the Soviets attempted to destroy it, crushing one side of it in the process. Thus, district hospitals were built using the bricks on their foundation. In an effort to preserve the site, people lived within the mausoleum. Lecture halls occasionally turn into stores. They justified its conservation by saying that people could use the pre-made storehouse because there was no storehouse for keeping wheat after the huge hall was dismantled. The sheep skin was then cleansed in there. There was Mukhtar Awezov in 1960. He noticed that the doors were half shattered and useless. Adil Sasakbayev was the first secretary at the time. Awezov requested that the first secretary set up the mausoleum. stating that it is an important relic and historical site that would be needed for future generations. Thus, he made one more visit to this location prior to his passing in 1961. The interior had been organized and cleaned, and the doors had been put in place at that point. Authorities assigned Dadash, an elderly man, to be a watchman for the wheat storage. This old man rescued some people from famine. People used to take wheat from here during the famine. He used to tell the women, "My daughters, please wear white boots and dip them in some wheat." When the nation was on the verge of starvation, women developed an affinity for the place, and they would return twice a day, in the afternoon and evening, to fill their boots with wheat. Many people survived the famine by roasting and eating the wheat. Back then, kindergarten didn't exist. Mothers would spread roasted wheat over goat wool. Children take some time to separate the wheat from the wool. As a result, a lot of individuals claim that they will never forget the elderly Dadash and that he is the reason they are still alive. The controllers weighed it with sacks back then, as there were no scales, and they took it away with oxen. They won't be aware that anything was taken as a result. However, despite the abundance of wheat, there was not a single instance of theft by the people. The fact that the wheat was within the mausoleum prevented the people from stealing due to their strong religious devotion.
Енді біздің ата-бабамыздың діні болмаса, ата-бабамыздың әрекеттері бір.
Someone points the fingers at and criticizes our forefathers' religion or behaviors. However, when such a complex and structure remained, the madrasa is a heritage bequeathed to us by our predecessors who retained it. Its first goals were to propagate Islam and teach the Quran. It was constructed in order to teach children about morals, educate them, help them get to know their deity, and help them serve their parents. Are there any conversations concerning this location? Is there a proposal to turn it back to a madrasa and begin teaching these things to children?
The Quran is not the only thing that madrasas should represent. This is a place for science. Nobody is able to fully understand it. We are not very literate in this sense, and we haven't seen a madrasa ourselves, despite graduating from the institute. Starting with a madrasa that provides high-level instruction in morals and truth is vital. This approach is really sincere. We owe it to our forefathers to have constructed such structures and preserved them for future generations. Hijra had a dining room, a lecture hall, and dorms. Are the bricks made and burnt right here? How many bricks went into making this structure? Where did these workers come from? The master's skill level must be quite high to create such a wonderful edifice. The workmen were from the local community, and they constructed it to aid. The masters were from Tashkent or Samarkand. This is the original dome. The second dome was added later. Both are identical and well made. But there's a significant difference if you examine attentively. Each was constructed by a different master. Ancient masters created the first one. Religion, the Quran, Tajweed, mathematics and medicine were all taught at madrasas. Mullahs circumcised children because they knew medicine. The madrasa taught them all of it. These days, I believe that constructing a madrasa is essential. It is like hearing the Quran in the morning when the madrasa is kept here. There are several of cemeteries close by. Every verse of the Quran that is recited aloud to them is a reward. Have you proposed the establishment of a madrasa?
Өзі медресе деген бізге дейінгі медресенің барлығын не үйретті? Діні ма?
Religion, the Quran, Tajweed, mathematics, and medicine were all taught at madrasas. Mullahs circumcised children because they knew medicine. The madrasa taught them all of it. These days, I believe that constructing a madrasa is essential. It's like hearing the Quran in the morning when the madrasa is kept here. There are several of cemeteries close by. Every verse of the Quran that is recited aloud to them is a reward. Have you proposed the establishment of a madrasa?
Осы жердегі оқылған әрбір Құран сауап болып тиіп тұрады ғой. Бұл медресе жасау үшін де бір ұсыныс сондай жасадыңыздар?
Бұны ұсыныс
We made such an offer 15 years ago. I have 20 years of experience as a candle lighter. Some people from Turkey arrived to open a madrasa at that time. The mausoleum had not been repaired at that time. Then, claiming that Turks would provide distorted education, the authorities refused to allow the opening of a madrasa. Sozak Abdikulov held the position of district hakim at that time. The mausoleum was renovated between 2006 and 2008 at that person's suggestion. This year saw more renovations. However, the Sozak neighborhood has a lot of holy sites. Baba Tukta Shashta Aziz, Kara Baba, Sara Baba, and Saint Kızılgöz. It was suggested that this madrasa become a museum with each room dedicated to a saint. However, the deputies opposed it, stating that there were many other matters to attend to than Yskak Bab. Here, patrons like Bolat Abjaparula Zhulkashiev constructed a new school and a decent road. Everything is there now except gas. Thank God first for that, and then thank the people that came to witness the Yskak Bab's last resting place. If an elderly person made a request, generous individuals would provide it to seek reward from God.
көру үшін келеді, не үшін келеді. Бір ауыз кореялар айтады, одан кейін сауап үшін істеп беріп жатыр.
Медресе салғым.
One might advise someone who wishes to construct a madrasa to become a sponsor for one Hijra instead of building a madrasa. Therefore, we may use the principle of one rich person for each Hijra.
Спонсор болса болады. Жақсы. Бұл енді мына сайды бұрын бір проект істеген, мына сайды толтырамыз.
It was only a project. There were ideas to fill the ravine in front of it, create a flower garden, and install a fountain. However, it was found that the trench could not be buried. The moisture is drawn towards the ravine by it. Amanjol Naymanbayev, an artist, was a great aid to this site. He advised us against planting willows in this location. It was said that the building's foundation might be harmed and degraded. This is why plantings are prohibited up to 50 meters from the mausoleum of Khoja Ahmed Yasawi. Naymanbayev says that the only things you should notice when you enter the gate are the Yskak Bab tomb and the madrasa.
Негізі сондай заттар жасап қойса да медресенің көрінісін де бұзады екен. Бір көрінісінің өзі әдемі екен негізінде.
Сол енді ол кісінің айтысаны дарвазадан бірінші кірген кезде
We turned down many requests from various people to construct a dining area only because of it. This relic needs to be viewed first, he remarked.
Жаңа кісілер қарсы шықты. Бірінші сенің анау евромен жасалған әшекейің емес, бірінші мына дүние көріну керек. Ана жақтан келген кезде. Содан анау дарвазадан сыртына салып жатқан сол.
Алла тағала сізден разы болсын, көке. Осындай ісіңізге, жұмысыңызға, бұл жай ғана жұмыс емес деймін. Бұл жай ғана жұмыс емес. Алланың алдында сауаптан жазсын. Тәрбиелеп отқан бала-шағаларыңыздың
God bless you and keep you. Let God see your labor as more than simply labor. Let it be a reward. Enjoy yourself while spending time with your child. I sincerely appreciate the interview. You can watch this interview on our Bilim Kazyna channel on YouTube.
көке сұхбат берген.
Thank you. May your work yield positive results.